Hey everyone, Lance Danger here. I'm just trying out this new way of recording so I can do the webcomic commentaries once more. And last time we left off about 2 years ago, we were talking about Fred Peterson, the Mighty Warlord, the webisode special that kind of bridged the gap between the prologue and chapter 1. And oddly enough, as I had stated before, both the prologue and the webisodes came much after I actually did chapters 1 and 2. Chapters 1 and 2, I had done it around 2002, 2003. And the prologue, it was towards the end of 2003 really that I actually did that. And the webisodes, I did it around 2004 or 2005. So yeah, it was kind of done out of order, even though that's the way it was actually published online eventually. So this chapter 1, is the one that I began with. And here we see this cover. It's relatively basic, Fred with the angel wings, and there's Jane to the left and Cheryl on the right. The funny bone eyes in the background, and the original Prospecto Arts logo that I went with, and the original Warlord logo that I had at the time as well. And I was kind of going for an anime kind of vibe on it, kind of a Neon Genesis Evangelion kind of anime intro kind of thing. And of course, the chapter name is Hypocrite 101. And as we go to the second page, here we go with the title page. This is actually one of my favorite title page, and this design kind of became a motif in a way when I wanted to introduce characters or let people know that a certain character is probably going to be important in that particular chapter. And there's Fred with a rare smile and my more manga influence in this one, which really contrasts with the rest of the chapter, which isn't as manga inspired as the cover or the title page was. And a lot of people actually really liked this opening of the castle and Fred advancing on the horse and the coloring of the page. It was on one of the first pages I did digital coloring with, so it was pretty interesting to do. I was really experimenting. I was really learning how to do digital colors, so that was fun to do. And of course, here's Fred battling someone that will eventually pop up again. For those who haven't read the webcomic, I don't want to spoil it. But again, you can see, especially compared to the prologue and especially in the webisodes, there's a very stark contrast in art styles. Um, Even though I still have the bit of a manga influence here, it was still more towards the American art style. Of course, here we have pretty much the introduction of a big character that most of you already know. But again, I don't want to go into specifics just yet. And boom, or poof, here we are in the present times. Fred waking up from that dream of the intro of this chapter, and he is late for college. Never a good thing. And even though this page has a lot of problems, like anatomy wise, of course, and perspective wise, it's actually one of my favorite pages in the whole run so far. There was a lot of energy in this page, and the coloring was a little off still, also. Again, I was getting accustomed to doing the digital coloring, and the funny thing is that a lot of these characters look kind of skinny, like extremely skinny, and that was really my fault because they didn't look as skinny in the original pages that I drew. It's just when I scanned it in and I was preparing it to color it, and when I kind of made the file smaller so I can color it and not take up too much strain on my computer, I didn't really know how to compress the pages at the time. So when I would make the pages smaller on the computer, I would somehow actually skew the artwork itself too. So that's why in many of those pages, in the first two chapters at least, the art got really weird in that sense, like extremely skinny. And here we go to page number 5. This really reminds me that I should do more backgrounds. Like as time went on, I got so focused on finishing a chapter that I really wouldn't concentrate that much on the backgrounds because I had to get it done. But again, a lot of problems with perspective and anatomy, but still, it's one of my prettiest pages, I think, if I do say so myself. It was a fun page to do. I used to really enjoy doing backgrounds a lot and background characters as well. And here we're introduced in the bottom to, of course, Fred Peterson's bestest friend, Jane Marie Jackson. And there's Charles Richmond there. At this point, Jane and Charles are boyfriends, so that was a thing. And here's Fred approaching the college campus on his motorcycle. Funny thing, originally I wasn't going to blur that art like that. I did that to kind of give the impression of speed of him approaching like a maniac or something on his motorcycle to the campus. But in reality, I just really hated how the drawing came out, that particular illustration. So it's like, I'll just blur it. uh, yeah, like that early on, I guess I was learning how to cut corners with digital art. Amazing. Well done, Lance. Well done, Lance Danger. I kind of like the layout on this page actually, even though there's a lot of things happening. There's like, how many panels are here? One, two, three, four, five, six, seven, eight, nine. Interesting. Yeah, Fred and Charles do not get along at all. Chapter 1 really is one of my most favorite chapters visually. I feel like I used to take a lot more chances in the sense of storytelling and just uh, character placement within the page and the backgrounds. There are actual backgrounds in this page, in these pages so far. And this one is actually pretty decent compared to the other ones. And there's an impossibly skinny Jane again. Like I said, it was compression issues. I really didn't know how to do that back then. A lot of dialogue. Of course, here we're introduced to John, one of Fred's closest friends. And of course, here is the lovely Cheryl. Cheryl Smith, Fred Peterson's girlfriend. High school sweethearts. They kept their relationship going up till college as well. Here they are in the campus cafeteria doing cutesy, couple stuff that young people do, I guess. I don't know anymore in that sense. I'm not exactly young anymore. Or am I? One of those rare moments where Fred is actually having fun and smiling. Little does he know everything that's going to be happening afterwards. Again, like, I'm kind of surprised at a lot of these shots and angles that I took for these. Like, even here, like, again, like, the perspective is all messed up, but at least I'm taking chances and actually doing backgrounds and more definitive establishing shots, and once again taking chances with the storytelling and the layout of the page. Of course, this is the introduction to Funny Bone in the comic. Yeah, extremely skinny Funny Bone. Oh, this is so much fun in a cringy kind of way. But anyway, a lot of people really, really liked this illustration when I first showed it around. So it has that going for it. A lot of people loved Funny Bone right from the get go. It's actually one of my favorite pages. It's something that I'm probably going to be saying a lot throughout this video because I don't know, like I really don't appreciate my own stuff as much as I was talking about in the 100 days of making comics videos that I'm doing for round number 8. I'm uploading those at truthfulcomic.com. I'll probably be uploading the video portion of those blogs here as well. I'll see how exactly I'm going to figure that out. I'm a person that I love the whole creative process to the extent where I love the process so much that sometimes or a lot of times really, I kind of feel disappointed in the end product when I finally finish things. So I've been kind of trying to make peace with that. So here we are, Funny Bone again. And I even experimented a lot with the body language and everything with body acting. I still do that to a certain extent, but not with like the detail that I had earlier on. And again, it's not that I've lost my touch or interest in doing it. It's just I have so many things going on at once that I really need to like get it done. Here's a nice little explosion. And we transition back to Fred. One thing that I really haven't shown much of is that I actually love drawing motorcycles. I don't know if it's a whole Akira thing or whatever, or I think even before that I used to be intrigued by motorcycles. And it's odd because I wouldn't want to ride on a motorcycle, but I absolutely love drawing them. I haven't drawn one in a long time. I really have to start sharpening those skills again, especially since I'm going to be doing the truthful comic editions of Fred Peterson, the Mighty Warlord, and I'll go more into detail on that on another video. But here we are. Fred sees a person just had a car accident and he rushes over, see if he can help. Boom, there's a lot of explosions in this. Like it's funny because Warlord has gotten this reputation of being a web comic, being a story that not much happens in it action wise. And looking at looking at this chapter 1 is like boom explosion, boom, a castle is burning. It's like, come on, give me a little bit more credit, guys. I'm trying. Really, I am. Like, I know it has more emotional stuff than the regular superhero-y kind of stuff, but it has its action, you know? Anyway, next page, Cheryl is waiting for Fred. They were going to go out on a date after class in university. Of course, Fred is indisposed at the moment. He's extremely late. He hasn't been able to get in contact with her. And John just happens to come by and sees her at campus and gives her a ride back to her home. I actually really like how this card came out too. It's probably the only card that came out decent that I've drawn in this series so far. Cars are the contrary to motorcycles. I don't like drawing cars as much. Though I did go through a phase when I was in middle school, not middle school, but junior high, that I would like to draw cars. And I still kind of liked it when I was doing this chapter, I guess. not so much now. I have learned tips and tricks to draw better cars, but I've always found, I don't know, I kind of lost interest in drawing cars, especially since I feel I can get more dynamic images from a motorcycle than an actual car. But I'm going to try to practice drawing more cars and more mechanical stuff as well. And here we are, we see Fred. He wakes up, he's alive, he finds that he saved the woman that was in the car, and his cell phone got destroyed. And the funny thing is that that cell phone he's holding was actually one of the first cell phones I owned. I modeled it after that, so that doesn't help dispel the rumors that Fred Peterson is actually me. Yeah. And the fun fact also is that the crack on that screen on the phone was actually not that far away from how it was on my phone. Back then, I used to work in a factory, and I was going to be leaving, ending my shift for the day, and I just kind of casually, accidentally hit with my hip the corner of one of the tables. I thought everything was fine. I didn't feel nothing, so I was like, okay, I just bumped into that. Then when I took my phone out to make a phone call to a friend, I see like this massive like dent on the screen and like cracks. I'm like, oh, okay. That just took a bullet for me, I guess. That corner of the table was more dangerous than I thought. But it ended up being immortalized in The Mighty Warlord Chapter 1. So it has that going for it. Here we see Fred trying to reach Cheryl desperately at the campus, not knowing that she's already gone. He runs into Jane, of course, and here it's not visible now. It was more visible back then because actually it looks a lot smaller here now on the screen on Drunk Duck and all the other places that I had uploaded it. But the resolution was a lot bigger back then. This was like standard resolution, I guess, back then, before everything became more high definition and widescreen laptops and widescreen monitors became the thing. So everything just got a lot smaller. But in this panel right here, where he has like the sweat drop over him and he's all chibi, it actually says Oro in his mouth. My little tribute to Rurouni Kenshin, of course. Like quite a few people caught that, and I really appreciate the fact that a lot of people actually got that. Here we have Fred and Jane talking. Fred explains to Jane everything that happened, and Jane is going to, of course, play peacemaker between Cheryl and Fred because they're both her best friends. And I'm not going to go too much into detail about their relationship because, again, I don't want to spoil many things just yet. And here is Fred's parents' house. And it's funny, a lot of people actually commented that they liked that fact that the house was pink. I was like, okay, that's cool. But anyway, yeah, Fred's parents really don't get along. They're at that stage of their marriage where it's like they should really get a divorce, but they still kind of cling on to each other to an extent. And of course, doesn't really take too kindly to that. That's one of the main reasons he moved out anyway and went on his own to live closer to the college campus. Of course, here's Fred going back to the campus to the basketball court. He's the captain of the varsity team in the college. So he's just going there to like vent his frustrations by throwing some hoops, and of course his coach chastises him because he's a cranky one. He wants Fred's student ID, of course, in exchange for the keys and the basketball, for him to lock up after himself. And there goes Fred happily on his way to go to the basketball court when dun dun dun, the first confrontation between Fred and Funnybone. And again, I really like this page for as much problems as it has. Once again, with the whole foreshortening, the anatomy, and even the coloring is kind of off in that big panel where Funny Bone is. I really didn't know much about color composition at the time. So, once again, I was just learning how to do digital colors in the first place. And even though I should have known better with my color choices, since I did like to color a lot when I would color with colored pencils and watercolor and all that. Uh, I guess I kind of went overboard, like finding all the little things like, ooh, you can invert colors, and like in the inset panel here, or ooh, I can experiment with gradients. So yeah, this is just me kind of like in my awkward growing experimenting phase. Even though I really actually do like this image a lot, there's a lot that I would change now, of course, and I'm going to change eventually. But for what it was back then, I was actually really proud of that page. And again, a lot of people really liked this page as well. I think that a lot of the popularity, I guess, that Funny Bone has had throughout all this time has been because he caused such a big impression in the webisodes and here in chapter one, especially in chapter one. He had pretty much all the cool scenes in chapter one and the cool moments in the webisodes as well. So he kind of stole the show in that sense. And it helped save him because, as I mentioned before, it was only going to be appearing in those first few chapters and then he was going to disappear. Like, not really knowing if he died or not, but he definitely didn't come back. And at the end of the chapter, here we have a wallpaper I had done. Again, the resolution was way different back then. This is 2006, as you more than likely can see there on the screen. So yeah, that was chapter one of Fred Peterson, The Mighty Warlord. Overall, it's one of my favorite chapters. It's definitely one of the most endearing chapters to me. I went through a lot when I did this chapter. The first two chapters specifically, I was going through a lot of shoulder problems that still plague me. It was a shoulder injury that I've had since high school, and it took me about almost 3 years actually to do chapter one and chapter two of Warlord, believe it or not. And it's a shame that in a way it kind of lost a lot of details and it kind of doesn't show that I spent that much time doing those chapters in a way because of how I compressed the files for the coloring. But it still looks decent enough, I guess, and it was decent enough for people to really get curious for the comic back then. So I'm really thankful for that. That a lot of the people that started reading then are actually 13 years later still reading it. It's like, wow, thank you. I really, really appreciate that, and I really, really hope that everything I'm doing is really worth the wait that sometimes you have to go through because of things that just happens. I go through. I really have gone through a lot of weird things that would have likely made any other person quit by now, but I'm still here going. For better or worse, I'm still here. So yeah, that was chapter one. There was nothing especially groundbreaking or spicy behind the story, kind of like with the prologue, which was done in a very dark period of my personal life. And the webisode was kind of like that awkward phase of finding myself again. Chapter 1 and chapter 2 was just really me finally taking a chance into doing this thing that I've been wanting to do for my entire life at that point. So this was just like my victory song to be able to get this done and get this colored and put it out. And it's funny because the person I was in a relationship with back then, um that I've mentioned before, that the relationship ended during the time that I was doing the prologue. And this was quite a few years later when I started updating and uploading the comic onto the internet. We would stay in contact every now and then. And at one point, when she found out that I was publishing my comic online, she goes ahead and tells me that she's very happy that I'm putting it out there because she thought I was never going to do anything with it at all. And it was like, well, thank you for that vote of confidence. And again, it is what it is. You know, it's out there. I'm very excited that there's more plans about this comic. 13 years later, it's still going relatively strong. Actually, a lot of things have the viewership and the readership has actually become stronger as the years go by, and I'm really grateful for that. I mean, last year, for the first time ever, Fred Peterson, The Mighty Warlord, was nominated for Best Superhero Comic on Drunk Duck, and that is mind blowing to me because of all the false starts and all the stop and start from everything that's been happening. It's really like, again, I just feel grateful that not only do I get to keep doing this, but that people still keep coming back to read it and new people keep discovering it too. So, once again, I really hope that what I'm doing is worth your time and that you're able to get some value out of it. And if it inspires you to create something, that's the ultimate compliment to me. And that's kind of the end goal for me, like not just put my story out there but to inspire other people to put their own story out there as well. And I think I'm going to end this chapter on that note. Again, I'm sorry if this was kind of boring compared to the other two um, webcomic commentaries. There are others that get spicier along the way, I guess. But in the meantime, thank you all for listening and have a good one.